I think it's fair to say that we haven't exactly been drowning in quality sci-fi movies over the past few years. Yeah, Dune turned out pretty good, but really that was just another adaptation of an existing story. And yeah, Avatar 2 certainly looked nice, but it was about as intellectually engaging as an episode of Teletubbies. What most of us were looking for was something new, something interesting and thought-provoking, something that would expand our horizons and fire our imaginations. In steps Gareth Edwards with The Creator, a movie that certainly has big aspirations to do all of the above, while pairing it up with the kind of explosive, hard-hitting action sequences that made Rogue One the only half-decent Star Wars movie that Disney are ever likely to make. And if you're familiar with both movies, then you'll probably spot a few similarities between the two, but I'll get back to that one later. Believe that. Now, I've got to admit, I knew almost nothing about The Creator until a couple of weeks ago, which might be a result of alcohol-induced liver failure, or maybe the studio just didn't do a very good job building up the hype around it. To be honest though, that might be to its benefit because I went into it with very few expectations, and I suspect a lot of other people did too. But what you're really here to find out is it actually any good? Well, sort of. It does a lot of things extremely well, manages to address some very timely issues in the present day, makes the most of its limited resources to produce some genuinely impressive visuals, introduces a cast of characters with lots of nuance and understandable motivations played by extremely capable actors, and generally comes across as a movie that had a lot of passion and care put into it. That being said, it is let down by a slightly muddled and bloated script that indulges in a few too many protracted action scenes, relies too much on convenience and coincidence to keep things moving forwards, doesn't really give its weighty subject matter the time or attention that it needs, and probably sees itself as a bit more deep and meaningful than it really is. In short, while it's better than the mindless sludge that passes for mainstream Hollywood movies these days, it does fall frustratingly short of the potential that it clearly had. The movie is set in the mid-21st century where artificial intelligence has grown to influence every aspect of human life. Well, until the robots apparently turned against their human masters by detonating a nuclear weapon in Los Angeles, effectively solving the homeless problem with extreme prejudice. From then on, robots have been outlawed and the US government has launched a full-scale war to eradicate them, assisted by a giant orbital weapons platform that can wipe out entire cities with a single strike. The only remaining holdout is New Asia, which continues to harbour and develop AI systems with the help of Nirmata, a genius but enigmatic scientist. Enter Joshua Taylor, an American soldier sent undercover in New Asia to find Nirmata and kill him. Along the way, he falls in love with a woman named Maya, only for the mission to fall apart when his superiors jump the gun and order a raid on the compound, resulting in her apparent death. Skip forward 5 years and Taylor gets recruited for a second mission to eliminate a mysterious new weapon that could turn the tide of war against humanity. The clincher for him is the revelation that Maya is still alive and well and apparently helping to develop the weapon. Before you know it, Taylor and his team are deep behind enemy lines and manage to get their hands on the weapon, which turns out to be an android in the shape of a small girl. A girl who's the key to everything, if you will.
Oh, come on!
Yes, it's one of those movies. Anyway, the mission goes tits up and most of the team get killed or captured, forcing Taylor to go on the run with the girl who's the key to everything. What follows is a protracted cat and mouse game as Taylor and his new friend travel through New Asia on their way to find Maya, gradually forming a paternal bond while being pursued by the local government, the US military, and Nirmata's rebel forces. But will Taylor ever be reunited with his wife again? Will the girl who's the key to everything end the war and bring about a lasting peace, or become the ultimate weapon that can destroy humanity? Story-wise, there's a lot going on in The Creator. It's trying to wrestle with a ton of different themes, subplots, and character arcs, while working in some pretty extensive action sequences that eat up a lot of screen time, and the impression I get is that Gareth Edwards might have bitten off more than he can chew with this one. The result is that while The Creator definitely gives the audience a lot to think about, it doesn't have enough time to provide satisfying resolutions to most of them. The age-old question of whether machines can truly achieve consciousness is basically glossed over in favour of the war to eliminate them. The revelation about the nuclear blast in LA that completely changes the nature of the entire war is handled with literally a single line of dialogue and then never mentioned again. Characters conveniently bump into the exact people they need to find in order to move the plot forwards, and antagonists make pretty illogical decisions to give the heroes a convenient way out. The girl who's the key to everything has the power to control every computer on Earth, but the long-term questions of what she might do with that kind of power are never addressed. The moral, ethical and legal implications of America launching genocidal wars against foreign countries are never questioned. And yes, I'm aware of the very obvious parallels with conflicts like Vietnam and Afghanistan, but there is such a thing as being a little too on the nose. I mentioned before that the film bears an uncanny resemblance to Rogue One, and the more you think about it, the more obvious the comparison becomes. A jaded protagonist lured into a dangerous mission on the promise of being reunited with a loved one, an imperialistic enemy with overwhelming resources and aspirations for global domination opposed by a small faction of lightly armed freedom fighters, and a desperate mission to take down an orbital superweapon, culminating in a poignant reunion against a backdrop of apocalyptic destruction. I mean, this is Gareth Edwards' first major outing as writer and director, so I can't blame the guy for falling back on some familiar tropes to anchor his story, but it might have been nice to get a bit more originality. On the plus side, the character work in The Creator is generally very strong. Taylor's a likeable protagonist, and you can totally understand the guy's inner conflict between the mission and his personal motivations. I'm not entirely sure why they gave him a prosthetic arm and leg when they provide him with no extra abilities, and he's never forced to survive without them, but whatever. The supporting cast are all solid, and fuck me, it's always nice to see Finchy from The Office cropping up in the weirdest places.
Christ, give me half hour with her, I'll be up to me nuts and guts.
Seriously though, the more I see this guy, the more I like him as an actor. And I've got to give special mention to Madeleine Voiles as the girl who's the key to everything. Her performance is superb for such a young actor. She brings exactly the right mix of curiosity and childlike innocence to what could have been a pedestrian character. Visually, The Creator looks fantastic, to the point where I had to double check the budget, because honestly, it looks way better than most films that cost 2 or 3 times as much, and it shows that you don't have to bankrupt your entire fucking studio just to make a half decent film. The technology, equipment and weapons all look functional and believable, and overall, it feels like a world that real people actually live in. Imagine that! Ultimately, there's a lot to recommend about The Creator, and while Gareth Edwards' aspirations probably outstrip his abilities with this script, it's a decent enough movie that kept me interested and engaged, provided some fun action set pieces that actually had a bit of weight behind them, and delivered some pretty good emotional payoffs by the end. And well, it proves that you don't need a $300 million budget to compete with the big boys in 2023. And it's exactly the kind of original, inventive movie made by talented filmmakers that we need to see a lot more of in modern cinema. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.